He had always lived in pixels, chasing validation measured in clicks and likes. But today, he wanted something bigger, something unforgettable. The screen flickered as he staged it, a life erased in a single frame. The camera captured the perfect fall, the staged chaos, and then silence. Upload, and the world gasped. Notifications surged. Comments exploded. Friends called in panic. Fans mourned someone who wasn't really gone. Yet behind the lens, a knot twisted in his stomach. A whisper of doubt that reality might not remain obedient to his plan. The line between performance and truth was thinner than he ever imagined, and already it was beginning to tremble. The world mourned him before he had even lived again. Comments streamed in like waves, each one a testament to attention turned grief. Ethan watched from shadows, a voyeur to his own spectacle, feeling an unexpected pang of guilt. The line between creator and creation blurred, and he wondered whether he had awakened something he could not contain. Each like, each share, each retweet became a mirror, reflecting not his face, but a mask he could no longer remove. Even the closest friends felt the sting of absence. Lila paced the small apartment, scrolling endlessly, heart tight with disbelief. Max, trapped in a quiet bedroom, replayed the video, hearing echoes of laughter and panic he could not reconcile. They mourned him, but he was still here. The cruel irony hung heavy, a philosophical weight pressing on the thin line between performance and truth. The public's fascination was insatiable. Every share fed the illusion, every viral headline cemented it. Ethan's reflection in dark screens reminded him, truth is fragile. A single lie, magnified by millions, can become a reality more compelling than life itself. And he had learned too late that the eye of the world is not a lens. It is a mirror that never blinks. By nightfall, notifications became whispers, whispers became doubts, and doubts became shadows in the corners of Ethan's room. The world thought he was gone. Yet the reality he had created refused to stay within the frame. Something stirred in the space between viral fiction and undeniable truth, hinting that consequences once invited are impossible to ignore. The world did not pause to ask questions. It only demanded spectacle. Headlines screamed his demise. Social media feeds flooded with tributes, and strangers mourned a man they had never truly known. Ethan watched from the shadows, a ghost in his own story, feeling the corrosive sting of guilt creep inward. Each tribute, each post, each video reaction became a mirror, reflecting not just his creation but the moral fracture that his pursuit of attention had caused. The boundaries of performance and reality blurred, leaving a hollow echo in place of conscience. Lila and Max felt the aftershocks. Friends called, relatives whispered, and their shared disbelief became a quiet torment. Each conversation was a reminder of the fragile line Ethan had crossed. Grief mingled with confusion, and every replay of the video deepened the ethical chasm between the world's perception and the uncomfortable truth that he was still here. The fabric of trust had been torn, and nothing could stitch it back together without revealing the lie. The media descended like vultures. Serena pounded the keys in the newsroom, chasing every lead, dissecting every reaction. Headlines questioned motives, dissected relationships, and examined the viral spectacle with relentless scrutiny. Ethan felt the pressure through the glow of his screens, the creeping realization that once a lie enters the public eye, it begins to escape control. The world had claimed ownership of his story, and he could no longer distinguish between what he had fabricated and what was emerging as consequence. Fans became characters in a collective narrative, creating theories and tributes, overlaying their own fears and desires onto his staged demise. Jordan watched each new post with obsessive fascination, dissecting every detail, analyzing every frame as though the lie itself were scripture. In his obsession, the performance had already become reality for others, and Ethan realized the gravity of the domino he had set in motion. Once a lie touched the hearts of millions, It gained momentum, an unstoppable force indifferent to truth. Night fell, but Ethan's guilt did not. Shadows seemed longer, the hum of electronics louder. Every ping of a notification echoed like a heartbeat, each comment a whisper of accusation. The world had embraced Elias' truth, and in the quiet hours, he began to sense a subtle but undeniable shift. Reality, once predictable, was bending under the weight of his fabrication. And he wondered, had he unleashed something he could no longer contain? Sleep no longer visited him in peace. Dreams merged with fragments of the video, the fall he had staged replaying in infinite variations. Each morning, the line between what had been fabricated and what might be real seemed thinner. Ethan questioned whether the world outside or the one inside his mind had shifted first. Shadows whispered in corners, and reflections betrayed hints of something moving without reason. The performance had begun to escape the frame, and he felt the first tremors of true fear. Lila sensed it first. A message, an image, a subtle clue that something had shifted in the world Ethan had manipulated. She walked through familiar streets but felt them strange, almost unfamiliar, as if reality itself were folding around the lie. Fear and disbelief intertwined, and she wondered whether she could ever trust what her eyes told her. Every heartbeat became a question. Every step, a tentative exploration of a reality that no longer felt safe. Max, confined in his room, replayed the video over and over, but each iteration seemed different. Subtle movements, shadows, or expressions he hadn't noticed before began to appear, as if the recording itself were alive, responding to unseen forces. The safety of a fixed reality was gone. The lie had begun to echo back, mutating in ways that made comprehension impossible. The question that haunted him most was Ethan still merely the orchestrator, or had he become a character in a story beyond his control? Even the digital world seemed to rebel. Notifications arrived hours before expected. Comments appeared that he had never seen typed. Each post felt less like communication and more like a pulse of collective awareness, reminding him that reality could bend to perception when enough eyes bore witness. Ethan realized that the narrative he had created was no longer contained. It was bleeding outward, touching everything it had once only imitated. By night, the blurring became undeniable. Hallways in his apartment stretched longer than they should. Familiar furniture appeared out of place. Even the sound of his own breathing seemed layered with echoes of someone else. Ethan's mind teetered on the edge, caught between guilt, fear, and awe. The lie had grown beyond him, an organism of attention and consequence. He was no longer simply the creator. He was an actor in a reality shaped by millions of unseen witnesses, and there was no way to step off the stage. The applause had faded. The world that once celebrated him now existed in silence, leaving only shadows to keep company. Ethan wandered through his apartment like a ghost, the walls heavy with the echoes of laughter and disbelief. Friends reached out, but each call was met with hesitance, a reminder that trust, once broken, cannot easily be mended. The viral thrill had vanished, leaving him to confront the gravity of a lie that had grown teeth. Lila hesitated at his door, hand trembling on the knob. She wanted to reach him, to pull him from the spiral, but fear and disappointment held her back. Ethan's absence, once staged, had become profound, a chasm of silence between them. The lie had created a wall stronger than any door, leaving friendship strained and fragile. Max tried to reach out through texts and calls, but every message went unanswered. The bond of shared history had frayed into silence, and with each ignored message, guilt became a heavier companion. He wondered whether Ethan's isolation was punishment or a symptom of fear, that the lie he had crafted had now trapped him in a cage of his own making. The viral world moved on, indifferent to the private decay it had caused. Jordan scrolled endlessly, oblivious to the real suffering behind the content he consumed. Ethan's isolation deepened as the feedback loop of attention and consequence fractured entirely. He was left alone with the knowledge that while the public's fascination had waned, the moral consequences remained uncompromising and sharp. Night deepened into silence, punctuated only by the hum of electronics and the occasional whisper of wind against windows. Ethan wandered through his apartment, each room a mirror of isolation, each shadow a reminder of the distance between truth and performance. The viral applause was gone, the world had moved on, but he remained, a solitary figure in the aftermath of his own creation, haunted by the weight of what had been unleashed. The carefully constructed illusion began to crack. Subtle signs emerged, messages from strangers claiming to have seen him when he was supposed to be gone. Shadows in photographs that hadn't existed before, whispers of reality slipping beyond his control. The viral stunt had become a mirror, reflecting a version of the world he could no longer manipulate. Every heartbeat carried tension. Every breath carried anticipation. He realized the lie had grown beyond him, feeding on fear, guilt, and curiosity alike. Lila arrived at his door, urgency in every step. The worry in her eyes mirrored the fear she could no longer contain. She demanded truth, demanded accountability, and in the tension between them, the magnitude of the hoax was revealed. Ethan's attempts at justification sounded hollow, even to him. Reality and performance collided, leaving no place to hide. "You sure didn't know her, TT. She didn't see." Max confronted him next, anger and heartbreak intertwining in his voice. Questions that had lingered in silence finally demanded answers. The weight of guilt became unbearable as Ethan faced not just personal consequences, but the moral responsibility of manipulating everyone he loved. The illusion was over. The truth had arrived with the force of inevitability. Even the digital world began to push back. Comments accusing him of deceit multiplied. Shares and reactions were no longer celebrations, but weapons. The viral feedback loop he had once controlled now turned against him, each notification a tiny needle of consequence. Ethan felt the truth of a simple reality. Attention may be fleeting, but accountability is relentless. By nightfall, the unraveling was complete. The boundaries he had drawn between performance and truth were gone. Friends confronted him, strangers accused him, and the very world that once celebrated him now questioned his existence. Alone, Ethan understood that every lie, no matter how spectacular, carries consequences that will find their way back, shaping reality in ways that cannot be erased. He was left standing amid the wreckage of his own creation, facing a truth more terrifying than any staged death. The world demanded answers, and Ethan could no longer hide behind screens or shadows. Every friend, every fan, every stranger who had mourned him confronted him in ways he had never anticipated. The lie, once playful, had hardened into a reality he could no longer manipulate. Every gaze, every whispered accusation, pressed against his conscience. The viral spectacle had transformed into a moral tribunal, and he was its only witness. Serena arrived, notebook in hand, voice calm but unwavering. Questions cut through the chaos, each one exposing the fragile core of Ethan's actions. The media had turned his performance into accountability, each headline a reflection of the truth he could no longer deny. He realized the world no longer wanted spectacle. It demanded reality, raw and unfiltered. Even Jordan, once obsessed with the viral spectacle, confronted Ethan online and in person, demanding the truth. The very machinery that had fueled his fame now amplified judgment. Every word spoken felt like a weight pressing him toward inevitability. Ethan could no longer craft reality. He could only respond to it. And the responses were unrelenting. The boundaries between past and present blurred. Every staged moment, every manipulated reaction, collided with reality in a wave of consequences. Ethan realized that the audience, once passive consumers, had become participants in a moral narrative he no longer controlled. He was not simply exposed, he was enmeshed in a network of accountability that demanded truth, confession, and the courage to face the aftermath. By nightfall, confrontation became confession. Ethan's voice trembled as he recounted his choices, the viral stunt, and the lie that had spiraled beyond comprehension. The witnesses, friends, family, media, and even fans listened, their gazes both accusatory and seeking understanding. The world he had fabricated demanded authenticity, and in yielding, he discovered the thin, painful path from deception to accountability. The world had moved on, but Ethan could not. Alone in the aftermath, he faced a truth harsher than any viral applause. Every action has a consequence, and some echoes are permanent. The performance had ended, but its ripples persisted, shaping lives and altering perception. He realized that in chasing fleeting attention, he had surrendered a deeper reality, one defined not by views but by responsibility, honesty, and the courage to live authentically. Lila approached cautiously, her presence a reminder that connection remained possible even after betrayal. Words were unnecessary. The silence spoke volumes. The fractures could not be erased, but they could be acknowledged. Ethan understood that accountability was not just a public spectacle. It was a personal journey, a reckoning of conscience that demanded both courage and humility. Max finally spoke, words carrying both anger and care. The weight of disappointment mingled with hope, reminding Ethan that human bonds, though fragile, are resilient. In facing those he had wronged, he began to understand the intangible cost of deception and the deeper value of truth beyond any screen or viral moment. Even Serena observed with quiet reflection. The media, once a judge, had become a mirror reflecting the societal appetite for spectacle and the ethical consequences of feeding it. Ethan realized that truth, once revealed, reshaped both the storyteller and the audience. Accountability, he learned, is a force far stronger than any fleeting fame. By dawn, a fragile calm settled over the room. The viral frenzy had faded, the lie had been confronted, and the consequences acknowledged. Ethan rose, feeling the weight of guilt, but also the possibility of redemption. The stage had crumbled, leaving only reality in its place, a reality defined not by views or validation, but by integrity, reflection, and the courage to face one's own choices. In the quiet light of morning, he understood. True reckoning is not an audience, but an honest confrontation with self.